Hello everybody, welcome to Remrov's World of Autism. I am Remrov and this is Pilaf. And this episode will be about autism and perfectionism. Being a perfectionist is quite a common autism trait. I have always been extremely perfectionistic with practically every aspect of my life, like hobbies and school and work, and even my own belongings. Sometimes this can be a really good thing because it's awesome when something is done perfectly, but it can also be quite of a curse sometimes, because sometimes I'm even hesitant to try something or to begin with something because I know it's going to take so much out of me, because you want to do it so perfectly and it's going to cost me so much energy to do it. Besides that, I also want to avoid getting upset when I didn't manage to do it perfectly, because that can even lead to a meltdown. So how come that it's such a common autism trait? One reason can be rigid thinking. Many people have quite a good idea about what good enough means, but the term good enough is quite vague. Pilaf is going to take a hike, I think. Yeah, good enough is quite a vague term, and vague terms like that are very difficult to understand for autistic people. So for us, there is only good or bad, and the gray area in between is just too vague. So it's only good for us when it's extremely perfect. Another reason can be attention to detail. Often, or many autistic people have a lot of focus to detail. I see the whole world in tiny little details, and when you see the whole world like that, then every tiny little flaw will become very visible as well. Like when I'm walking down the street and I see sparkly lights somewhere, then I immediately notice the broken lights, which other people often don't even notice. And the same is when I make a mistake in one of my drawings, for example, I see it as a huge flaw, while other people probably don't even notice that mistake, but I just can't deal with it. And another reason that autism is such a common, that perfectionism is such a common trait for autism, can be difficulties with change. Many autistic people find change is extremely difficult to deal with, and when you have a task, when you start a task or when you start something new, then you have a certain plan about what it's going to look like when it's finished. And when you make a mistake, then it is a change. Then it doesn't look like your plan and how it was supposed to look when it's finished. So that can be extremely difficult to deal with. When I make a mistake in my drawing, like I said, it just doesn't look like the way I planned, so I just find it extremely unacceptable. Then another reason is literal thinking. Many autistic people take language extremely literally, and when a teacher or a boss at work, for example, would tell me that something has to do very precisely, I will do it as precise as I can, and I will do it extremely perfect, because a little bit less than precise just doesn't exist. So when it's less than perfect, then it's just not good. So what are the pros and cons about perfectionism? The pros are that autistic people who are extremely perfectionistic, they're often very careful with their belongings, which can be a really good thing. For example, I have clothes that are 10 years old, but they still look like new. So I don't have to buy new clothes very often because I'm so careful with it. Another pro is high marks in school. We often do our very, very best in school. We don't accept less from ourselves than that. And work at jobs is also done perfectly. I just personally, I can't stand when I do a task at school or work or at my job below standard. I just don't see the point of it. Why doing it less than perfect? And for some jobs this can be a real pro, because for some jobs it's really necessary to do something perfectly. And also another pro is that autistic employees won't really break the rules or be too late at their work or so, or take a lunch break too long, for example, because that's also a change. That's deviating from the plan. The plan is like a 15-minute coffee break, so 15 minutes is exactly how long we will take a break. Then also there are quite a few cons for being a perfectionist. One con is difficulties with other people touching my belongings. I get very nervous when other people touch my belongings because I'm so careful with them. I also find it very difficult to loan my belongings to somebody else. It's actually out of the question because I'm just afraid that they will break. Sometimes I even find it difficult to touch my belongings myself when I buy something new. For example, once I had a chemistry set and I was so happy with it, but for years and years and years I didn't even touch it. It was just sitting there because I wanted to stay perfect. I wanted to stay nice, and I was also afraid to run out of the chemicals, and I was afraid that I wasn't able to replace them. Another con is afraid to start something, like I already said, because I know it's going to take so much energy out of me. It's going to take so much out of me to complete a task and to do it so perfectly that I'm just afraid to even start with it. And I also want to just avoid a meltdown when it's not perfect. Also, I tend to avoid competitions because if I don't win, then it's not perfect. And I find it quite difficult to lose with things. And I know that a lot of other people with perfectionism recognize this as well. Then there's another con, which is social embarrassment. I have an example for that. When I was still in school, I did a school to work in a laboratory in a hospital, and with the practicum classes like biology and chemistry, we had a lab journal, and in which you had to write everything down, the tests you did with chemistry, etc., the results of the test, and you had to keep this journal very nice and neat and clean, and you had to write in it with a neat handwriting. You just had to take very good care of your lab journal and keep it really clean. And I kept it really clean, and I spent a lot of time on it and effort to keep it really nice and really clean. Hey, Pilaf. Let's have Pilaf with us again. He's quite active today. So I was really happy with my the way my lab journal looked, and you would also get a mark for it after every semester. A mark for how it looked, how clean you kept it. And then one day, one other student in my class dropped a beaker of water over it, and I was so devastated. Everything, it was completely wet. My handwriting was ruined. All the papers were bubbly and wavy. Everything soaking wet, and the drawings I made in it were ruined. And I just couldn't deal with it. I was so angry and so disappointed and so nervous inside that I couldn't deal with it. But all the other students were just laughing a bit, and I knew that they wouldn't care at all if it happened to their lab journal. So I was just really afraid to express it, and I was just so extremely embarrassed because of it, because I also knew that my mark was going to be a lot lower now, just because somebody else messed my lab journal up. So that's another con about being so perfectionistic. And then another con is that work at school and jobs just take a lot more time, because you do it so precisely and you want to have it so perfectly. I noticed that a lot in school and with jobs as well, that I often didn't get tasks done on time. Also in school I was quite lucky with that some teachers, because they really liked the work I did and they were really happy with the work I did, that they were okay with the fact that I didn't get as much done as other students. So I was quite lucky with that. So now to the point of what can we do about being extremely perfectionistic, because sometimes it's just really not healthy. What can you do as a parent or a teacher with a student or a child who is extremely perfectionistic? How can you help this person? For example, you can give examples before a task. You can show an example. Okay, this is how it's supposed to look when it's finished. This is how it can look. It doesn't have to be more perfect or more precise than this. That can be very helpful, so that that person, that student or child, knows that he or she doesn't have to put more time and energy in it. Then another thing that can be very helpful is to keep reminding somebody that mistakes, making mistakes is okay. It's part of learning. Even though I say this now, I know that it doesn't really help me, because I just really hate to make mistakes. And even though I try to tell myself that it is okay to make mistakes, I still find it extremely difficult to deal with. But it might help others. So teachers and parents can keep telling this to their child or student. If you're perfectionistic yourself, you can just keep reminding yourself of that fact. Then something else that can be helpful is keeping priorities straight. When you work somewhere, or even when you have a hobby, or when you're an entrepreneur, you can make a list of what is the most important task, and which task actually really needs to be done very precisely. And then you can spend most energy on that task, and then the tasks that are below that on your list, you can spend less energy on that, because it's almost impossible to spend as much energy on literally everything. And I really know that from experience myself, and I still struggle with that a lot. I literally want to do everything I do perfectly, which takes so much out of it that it can even result in a burnout. So that's just not what you want. And then something else teachers or parents can do is, besides rewarding a student or a child with a result of a task, will reward them also for the effort of trying something new. Because then a child learns that trying something new is also a very important part of learning, and not just only the result. And then another thing that might really help is finding a job that perfectly fits with your perfectionism, like quality control, or being an editor, or a math teacher, or an accountant, or a surgeon. or a computer programmer, finding a job that doesn't have too many gray areas. That's a job in which your tasks can only be done in one certain way, and can only be done good or wrong, because that might be really helpful. Then you don't have to worry about any gray areas. So this was it. I hope that it was helpful. If you like my video, give me the thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Where's Pilaf? Pilaf, you want to be with us again to say bye to everybody? Pilaf and I wish you a great day, and we hope to see you in our next videos again. Bye!